about helping people understand what does this mean, and let's say what does this mean for the U.S., North America, and maybe around the world, of some of their insights. Love to introduce first Nelson Spitz. Nelson and I have been talking about this for some great times. Nelson, if you don't mind, kind of one introducing yourself, and how do you meet these other great gentlemen that are your partners now?
So I have been in commercial real estate since I graduated the University of Texas in 1980. And I have had a whole life of experience in working with real estate developers, owners, and and it's always been on a capacity of how do we build our portfolio to grow and perform better. And so that includes every aspect of building the right product, leasing it up, attracting the right tenants, and also operating it efficiently. And so we're always been looking for ways to produce better cash flow out of the real estate that our portfolio has been involved in. And I've been with multiple companies over that period of time and played multiple roles. And I started to realize, I guess it's been about 10 or 11 years ago that there doing the same thing over in another season. You're going to have winning seasons, losing seasons, but it gets like, what's my life been about? What do I really stand for? What's important? And I have always gravitated to leaving the world a better place than I found it, and trying to make contributions at some small level that I am that enhance, the community I work with. And so I learned about some solutions like CPACE, Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, at its an inception. And I thought, wow, this is something that really makes sense. And so I volunteered for a company, for not an organization called the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and they had a symposium going on at Rice University, and the guy that was leading the I guess the keynote was like one of the biggest players in commercial real estate, Gerald D. Hines. And so I thought, wow, I want to be in the audience of Gerald Hines and hear what he has to say, because he's built over 1,200 skyscrapers around the world. I mean, a real leader. And so I walked out of that meeting and thought, wow, how can I serve this community? And I volunteered on the energy efficiency and buildings group that was Houston was a focal city on the world stage. And so I met a lot of people that I would never have met and started to go down that road. And I met David, who said he was like the leader of the U.S. Green Building Council for Texas, and he recruited me to join their board. And I thought, great. So anyway, David and I have been bouncing ideas off of each other, realizing that I mean, I don't want to drag this out, but he said that information to the real estate entrepreneur is like driving a car without a, speedometer, or even, know what direction or your gas gauge. There's very little, that they know about the performance of their buildings that they're into. And so David's a building scientist, and he has been involved in creating systems and performance for multiple Class A buildings all over the country as well. So that's how I met David. And I met Bob actually through EXP, because he started a program that was involved in creating awareness through the EXP network on ESG and the performance. I'll introduce
Nelson,
you.
it was great that I had a chance to meet with both you and David. And David, I know, is the think tank, the architect of a lot of in the weeds, as we will call it. But David, maybe introducing yourself and your background, because I know it's quite extensive.
Yeah, I mean, Nelson touched on it. I'm an environmental engineer by degree, but I've been involved in, systems design and analytics in the built environment ecosystem for over 35 years. And Nelson alluded to it. There's a lot of value that's created by doing things, um, making decisions around designs, technologies, policies, and investment strategies that create greater asset value and kind of future-proof the buildings and communities we're creating, and we're not doing them consistently. So my role, and when I started my own company 10 years ago now, was to accelerate the deployment of these generationally responsible best practices by showing the business case substantiation around the value, not just the financial value, but also the human asset value, the natural asset value that we can do with these mature, readily available solutions. So, figuring out how to provide the predictive analytics that were directed specifically towards business cases, how to bring in manufacturers. I do work globally with manufacturers to help them understand in a very super granular perspective the environmental impacts through environmental product declarations, those assessments. So we've been going super granular on the design side and manufacturers to show our due diligence and being able to predict with a high level of accuracy just how sustainable we are. The challenge has been that the break between the developers down and investors understanding what all of this meant, what has been a challenge, and especially in the broker community, what's in it for them. Seriously, I mean, we're all businesses. We have to make money. How can they use this information in a way that attracts, more substantial clients, helps them maintain clients, but actually helps increase the future value of their properties. And so providing the predictive analytics, providing the stewardship through the projects, saying that you're going to do something, but actually making sure it's done is part of the success and the fun that I do, actually, working with project teams to figure out what has to be done, how the business case plays out, making sure it's done, and then, confirming that these performance outcomes are going to be realized for the life of the asset. It's just on a one-time thing once a project's done. So the whole life cycle part of this, the fact that, as you mentioned, Europe is leading the way on a lot of these things. But the interesting part is that the real estate community, investor communities, they realize that sustainable, resilient properties, assets have a higher rate of return and a lower risk. So, if you just focus on those two things, it already makes sense. So we're actually just in the process. We formed a strategic partnership with USGBC Texas to bring some of these services that have been traditionally only used as we support LEED certified projects, be able to bring them to anybody that wants to figure out how to do these analytics, provide the business case substantiation early in the project to their clients. So those are the types of things that we're rolling out, providing these center of excellence, and working with you, James, and the team and the rest of my partners here at ESG Impacts is critical to that success and scaling this. So super excited to be here.
And I know with Bob, I go back from the Sperry Van Ness days, so
that's right.
Kind of back
That's right.
even then. So Bob, if you don't mind sharing, because I think you bring a lot of relationship contacts and expertise also.
Well, thank you. I am a broker on the Chesapeake Bay. I manage and own the Chesapeake office of SVN. I've been an appraiser, a commercial appraiser for almost 40 years. But, I think what Tom Trong wrote on LinkedIn a few minutes ago, or a couple hours ago now, was it really key to what we're talking about today. And he writes, build smarter, invest better, lead the future. Sustainability isn't a trend. It's where capital, policy, and opportunity are all moving. I started moving in this direction in 2018 when Larry Fink wrote his annual letter to his portfolio companies, and he was saying at the time, you need to be operating under an ESG framework, and if you're not, BlackRock is not going to be your funder / business partner. So the question is, as Tom says, are you positioned to lead? Or are you playing catch up? And ESG internationally has been big long before 2018. Started actually in 2005 through the UN and a white paper entitled "Who Cares Wins," which I've always loved. I think that's just a great expression. It captures kind of all of us in this business. If you care, you win. If you care about your client, if you care about your property, if you care about your job and your consulting and your advising, all of it. If you care, you win. So it goes to say it's about understanding where the market is heading and making sure you're already there. ESG has been through some bumps through Texas and Florida saying, you're not managing our pension funds according to an ESG framework. You need to be managing our pension funds to be profitable, to generate return. Well, so sustainability and resiliency now have kind of taken on a new, I won't say a new life, but looking at it through a little bit of a different lens. And so now resilience and insurance costs, if anybody in commercial real estate is very concerned, and rightly so, about insurance expense. Also energy expense, which is kind of there are two of the lead areas that we're involved in. So I'd say, just as an introduction, I'm a broker. I understand brokerage. We all have a niche that we specialize in. Sustainability and resiliency is the niche that Nelson and I as brokers have chosen, and we've got this incredible support, but also an advisor to what we're doing on the brokerage side. And David, I think that's how the three of us come together and why we're here today.
And I think that's a perfect segue of now your company. What is your company as the three of you, and objectives? What are you building in for your mission, and how are you helping, and how can people, tap into your knowledge, consulting projects and everything else?
Let me keep going then. We're developing, we've developed in 2018-19 a system of metrics and algorithms to score ESG in commercial real estate. And it was done on a fee base. It was kind of a one-off project at a time, very much like an appraisal, which I've written hundreds of. Excuse me. And that's what we were doing. Now, recently, we have begun the process of automating the whole scoring process. And we found that it really generates a whole lot more than a score. A score is only interesting as it informs decisions that need to be made. And the score, so that's where it begins, but it's becoming a whole property intelligence record. So as you're trying to get ahead of sustainability, you need to understand it. Certainly, you need to know and be able to speak to what the sustainability of your subject property is, and that's what we're doing. Is it's automated, 5.5 million commercial properties around the country, and they'll all be scored. But that's just the start of it. Then, in the same breath, it will look forward and provide a set of asset management strategies or due diligence strategies that suggest that this property needs whatever it is that it needs in order to be more profitable, as Nelson alluded to. And so Nelson's created this PRISM report, which illuminates, if you will, imagine the spectrum coming through the other side of the prism. It illuminates the opportunity to add value, to increase sustainability, to position the property for an ultimate sale, if that's what the disposition strategy is, or whatever's next. You know that if you buy a property today, 7 years, 10 years from now, after the whatever length of holding period, you will be selling into a sustainable oriented marketplace. And you're going to be caught short at that time if you haven't addressed sustainability issues through that holding period. So what this PRISM report does, and what the algorithms do, is generate what those things are that ought to be done. And then what's really cool is that we have a group that we work with that will price all of those things in the market where the subject property is, and provide within minutes 3 quotes for contractors locally who can do that work, whether it's a solar installation or some other kind of sustainability energy saving program. But now you've got a before value, because the score also generates a confirmed certified real estate appraisal. Then you've got asset management strategies. Now you're ready for due diligence. And then you get an after score and an after value. And then all of that gets recorded in this property intelligence system. So now, in terms of the future of real estate, if we have 5.5 million commercial properties in a real estate intelligence system, it almost becomes like the kind of the New York Stock Exchange for real estate. That's overstating it, but that's the idea. And why not? It's not being done by anybody else. And you all know, you go to list a property today, or if you're the owner and you go to list it, you got to find your broker. You've got to go through the listing presentations. You've got to set the value. You've got to understand the marketing strategy. Then finally you get to put it in front of the market, and you go through a process. Is it a year? Is it, it's not a short, it's not a liquid situation. It's not an efficient marketplace. And so what we're doing is capturing all the sustainability features associated with that, and then really drilling down and having this property record that provides everything that one needs to be able to make those decisions. So at the end of the day, it's, how do we as brokers advise our clients? We give them the information. We give it to them faster and more completely than any other system out there. And for the Renaissance agents on this call, this is what we're hoping you'll join us to do. 5.5 million properties across the country. We're dealing with every buyer and seller, property manager, owner, occupant, tenant. And we're in a position now to hopefully generate a lot of leads for this entire call. And we got to be licensed in every state to do that, and that's where you guys come in.
Yeah, and I guess licensing, David, you're ready to jump in, because I know a lot of this technical engineering background. If you don't mind adding to this.
Yeah, so there's good news. ESG has become a four-letter word, under the current administration. I'll just address part of what I do. 50% of what I do is advocacy. So we've got to teach people about what the opportunity is in a way that they can internalize. And ESG in Texas became a dirty word, and it was Senate Bill 13 was actually passed to prevent public monies from being invested in any company that had ESG in their statement, which is just nuts. My wife is a retired health professional that worked in the school system. Her pension fund dropped in funds because ESG related companies actually create higher rates of return. We have worked locally with Democracy Forward and the American Sustainable Business Network to actually sue the state of Texas, and we won an injunction to stop that. So there is pushback on this. ESG has not stopped. It's just, instead of greenwashing, it's called green hushing now. People are doing it because it's, from a business case perspective, it just makes sense. Technology wise, we're continuing to create new solutions that are coming to market, but our challenge in providing solutions that solve these sustainability issues has never been a lack of proven designs or technologies or policies or even investment strategies from that perspective. We've had successful solutions proven thousands of times. Our problem has been inconsistent deployment, and that's an educational process, because speaking for my community, from a designer perspective, we have never been allowed really to be able to get into the investor's decision-making process. We've been given an amount of money that we had to create a product with and cram as much sustainability stuff in there as possible. We have, within ESG Impacts, flipped that narrative by providing that business case substantiation to everybody, every stakeholder now. And this is the global driver, if you want. The reality of it is that transparency and accountability is not going to back off. It is accelerating. And the end game of that is this information with AI and the things that Bob spoke to is going to be intimately available to every stakeholder, including the occupants or tenant businesses that want to go into buildings. We can already, with the services that we provide, direct tenant businesses to the right building where they will be more prosperous because it has better HVAC controllability or better daylighting, or all of these things that have the real value that businesses and tenants are looking for, that drive the occupancy of the building rates, the amount of money they're going to pay. Those are the things that we're working on nationally, but are happening globally. So we're planted firmly in that influencer position, which is around the developer, inflection point where money is trying to get to sustainable projects because it has a higher rate of return and it's lower risk, and money that wants to prove that's sustainable in the way they create buildings and communities that want to attract business. So we're able to provide this prism that works both ways, really, in assuring investors that their money is going to maximize the impact that they want and prove that out. And also that we have manufacturers that want to bring on projects that they can actually show that they are sustainable and attract money for further investment in them. So it's a super exciting time in that aspect, and all of this is related, like everything is in an ecosystem. The brokers have, from my point of view, have not had access to this information. It's not that they didn't care, they didn't know how to have the conversation. So the messaging is critical. That's what we're working on. We're excited to work with Renaissance and the rest of the team to help educate and advocate for these things, but around a business case environment, because at the end of the day, that is what is going. Money's always the problem, so that at the end of the day is going to be the hurdle, right?
Yeah, David, and that's the thing. Everyone always wants the math has to math, but if there's other ways of doing good, and it's all going that direction anyway, but it's just different timing, right? That's off. And I know you all went to a large convention. Maybe Nelson, can you share some of the large takeaways before later on? I would say after that, for Bob to do a presentation to kind of show the audience really some more about ESG, because sometimes we heard ESG for a while and then ESG kind of disappeared. Maybe like Davey, you were saying, it became a bad word, but it's necessary. So under the
Yeah, I'll give you a little
green,
insight here. So the conference is EarthX. It's the largest sustainability conference in the world, in Dallas. It is sponsored by Trammell Crow III, and his father, Trammell Crow Jr., I guess, was one of the largest developers in the world through the 1970s and 80s. And there's still, Crow Holdings is a huge enterprise of development all over the country. So I guess a big takeaway is the paradigm shift to understanding that we can't just look at a project at how do we build it as cheap as we can and deliver it at, the try and value engineer all the better performance so that we can build it cheaper, because building it cheaper is only short-term value that we can point out. Building better has a lot more value, and we can prove that, the long-term value of taking an asset and building above its lowest cost. And so that is a paradigm shift. And we match that with financing so that it's actually produces more revenue, and even with financing it, it can even get a higher leverage point because it's on the infrastructure. So equity can go to be measured better, than having to spend too much equity or borrow very expensive mezzanine or a bridge loan debt, which can really make the economics of a project strained. And so we can bring a lot of those insights as to how do we do a better result. So, and also, we still understand that, even though we think there's borders, around the world, there's no borders. It's one Earth. And every time we do things that are taking away from the Earth's ability to metabolize all the strain we're putting on it, is going to come out in a higher, higher insurance claims and things like that. So, I mean, we can't get around it, we just have to address it. And so addressing it in the most comprehensive way is, what EarthX is about, I think.
And that's exciting that there are many people like you carrying the torch, keep moving it along. We were always saying that Europe is still always doing it. Parts of Asia, I think, are looking at it, certain countries. And while Bob is getting the slides up, David, you want to share kind of more technical on this? What you see with the rest of the world, where are the spots that is really embracing this a lot more?
Yeah, so I mentioned environmental product declarations, EPDs. Most people still think that's some sort of male performance issue. It is not. The reality of it is that EPDs are now the minimum requirement to be allowed on a project for almost anything. A lot of public municipalities and some states are demanding that you have to show what the environmental product, show your performance under that EPD, and that's just the start. There's going to be more of these hurdles, entry points to bringing in your product into a building, being able to prove that you're being good stewards, or of the process, and that's not going to get that's just going to get more and more granular. And but that's fine, that we can do those things. And we as an industry, and one of the things in EarthX that we kept running into, and one of the exciting parts is lots of manufacturers have really good solutions, and they need help in bringing them to market. But we can't bring them to market if and the marketplace always wins. I should have said this early. We all know that the marketplace always wins. So if the marketplace, as Nelson mentioned previously, is fixated on this lowest first cost minimum code paradigm, where the maximum expectation is the absolute lowest minimum requirement, then we need to change how the marketplace is valuing what it is that we do. And that's happening, not as fast as we all would hope. And there's some people within each industry that don't want that to happen any faster. They don't want to expose that their properties are, obsolete, for a kind term, but they need a lot of work, or they just tear down. So the real estate industry as a whole, if they, you think about it, if they really did grab onto the whole sustainability message and started building buildings that we know we could build nowadays, a lot of properties would look pretty bad. So, we're developing solutions, and EarthX was there, speaking to that. I also came back to Houston for a conference called Gulf Coast Green. There is so much professionalism and passion out there to do better. And what they haven't had was the ability to bring these business case substantiation, the due diligence to show that, change happens at the speed of trust. And it's developing that level of trust that takes people outside of their comfort zones to look at a different way of doing it. But at the end of the day, we're in real estate, and everything that we do in ESG impacts, we want to create places for everybody to live, learn, work, and play, where they can thrive and prosper, be that school children or a professional business inside of a 56-story office building. At the end of the day, we're creating spaces where they can prosper and thrive. And if we focus on that, backing into that expectation, that creates a higher value product. And we just have to work on messaging, how to get these Class C and D buildings to some semblance of that.
That's
that
going to
they
take
have to
work,
bring
David,
back.
as we all know. It costs money, or the government needs to give some credits or something to help.
I don't think we do though, Jim. I don't think that the government needs to get involved. I think that the reality is the market is moving there, and for those people that own these assets, there's only one or two options. You know, they get out, they just cut their losses and flee, or they better understand how to get there, and they take incremental steps, right?
There we
And this is
go.
not an all or nothing thing. It never will be.
Yes.
I heard
I want
someone
to add
say,
something to that, David. Yes, the federal, state, local, and manufacturers, utility companies all have programs and incentives that can be, I guess, applied for and applied to projects to lower the cost and help implement some of these improvements. And we
sure,
specialize in that. Actually, we have a relationship with a company that has the largest database of incentives in the nation, and we can provide a report to anybody that's interested that has a client. We can provide a free report. If they were to go to their website alone, it would cost them $500 to get that report. But you know,
Let me get Bob a chance to share the presentation, because I know with the audience, there's going to probably be some good questions on that. But Bob, if you want to share your presentation and kind of overview for
And
everyone.
it is on the screen, is it not?
It
Yes.
is.
Yes. Okay, good. So this is something that we prepared for the EarthX conference, which you've heard Nelson and David both talking about. And it was really, it was very interesting. And we had a firm place at the table, and it was exciting to see. And, we're dealing with people who are creating a new non-combustible engine, and they're there for sustainability purposes. And then real estate, and then food insecurity. I mean, there's all kinds of things kind of going on at this conference. It was fascinating. But real estate was certainly part of it. We've talked a little bit about the kind of the issues with the semantics of ESG. The standardization is something that we're working on, but there's a lot of money contained in this thought process, in this program. And if with the data, it can be illuminated through the prism, and it can be pulled out, which is really what we're aiming to do. We're all about the economics of ESG. We come at it from the standpoint of brokerage and valuation. And this is a great new opportunity. It's $20 trillion asset class or more. The total available market is tremendous, 5.5 million properties, which we've talked about. And I think for the guys on this call, the first mover advantage is right now. And we feel like we're coming to market. You've seen in this presentation that we're launching on July 4th. July 4th, 2026 is the 250th anniversary of this country. It just seems opportune and appropriate that we would do it then. So July 4th, and I won't say unveil, but we'll launch this product. So we're using, I mentioned automating every part of it, and agentic AI, which is at the heart of this automation strategy, is very cool. And I'm able to build it personally. I've got probably 7 different AI software programs going at a time, and one is instructing the other. One is an architect, one is a coder, another one, is a publisher, and it's fascinating to be involved in it. You guys know that the agentic AI is the third wave of AI, and it is unquestionably the wave of the future. It allows us, all of us, to do something that's really pretty remarkable. But it is building this system. It'll build it for each one of the 5.5 million properties, and then we'll build it again on a resilience platform to capture underrepresented populations in at-risk areas. So we'll do a couple of things with it. The property intelligence record that I talked about is also really cool. Again, this score is interesting to me. It's probably interesting to property owners. It may or may not be pervasive in the real estate community, but the property intelligence record will be. It'll be part of every transaction, every due diligence, every asset management. So that's coming. I mentioned that already. The different ways. This is when we were at EarthX. EarthX does a really great job of bringing investors into the room to meet with all these people who are innovating, creating. And this was a slide we put together just for them to show there's some different revenue streams that we're working through. The circular economy is a big part of what was talked about at the conference. It was just after a long period of preparation. EarthX is unveiling at this conference. I probably attended 5 different programs on the circular economy. Years ago, I had created something called the Chesapeake Triangle, I was trying to create the Chesapeake Triangle, which was a 6,000-acre parcel here outside of Washington that would rival or be patterned after the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, where, in simple terms, the inputs of one are the outputs of another, and they're all proximate to each other. There's no waste or little waste, and that's the circular economy at work. So the circular nature of things is what we're capturing here in this one diagram, the economics of ESG real estate. The Brit score is the score that we've been talking about, and there'll be a field app, a mobile app that will be a part of how we get information into the web app or into the system. And so when you watch the icon unfolds on your app screen, and you have the clock going around, I asked the chat GBT to design something that each tick of the clock would unveil another letter of the acronym, and so that'll be the icon for the mobile app. For the folks at EarthX, many of whom have known David over the years, we're meeting Nelson and me really for the first time. A quick summary of the products and services that we provide, and the different analytics, which we kind of took out of the appraisal and economic analysis world on one side, and then for P3I Global, the impact advocacy tech on the other, decarbonization being a big part of what we're working on, the ESG scoring, the audit process, all of that, Energy Star Portfolio Manager, energy monitoring, carbon reduction, the real estate services. I mean, that's who we are. And then this is a live QR code, and encourage people, if you're on the call and can capture that, it'll take you to another deck where you can sign up, if you will, for the July 4th launch. July 4th will be Maryland first, where I am, work the bugs out, but then hopefully over the course of time you can get your Brit score and have access to that going forward. That's the QR code that'll take you to that page. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, David, you can keep that up, but with this score,
Okay.
And why did,
It didn't come through clear.
So can you expand a little more of the scoring and who would actually use the scoring and what's the benefit of the scoring to everyone?
I'm sorry, was that to me or was that to David?
Just the group or Bob, since you were presenting, but maybe getting a feedback because the numbers in the scoring, like we all know a FICO score, what that means. What does the scoring mean? Who actually uses the scoring and how could it benefit, to some entity, whether it's finance, development, the scoring that you guys developed?
The objective is that the lending community, Mortgage Bankers Association, Appraisal Institute, large organization, Appraisal Foundation, perhaps, the groups that really are driving the transaction process. And so if all the brokers would use it, to the extent that there's a real estate appraisal associated with the score, then how many times have we come into a situation where we have an unrealistic seller or we have a difficult buyer, or so now, for better or for worse, both sides will have access to the same information, and levels the playing field a little bit. So there will be, from the standpoint of who all's using it, so buyers, sellers, brokers. Not every broker comes out of a long commercial background. So if you're new to the business, if you've been in it for a long time, and you want to test your market analysis or what have you, this would be another way that brokers could use it. Again, owners occupying, owners and sellers, buyers, they would be using it. Lenders using it. And the Mortgage Bankers Association, they have seen these metrics. They've adopted our E metrics, the environmental and energy metrics, and as that goes forward, they can discount loans based on the quality of the ESG score, and that's why they were looking in the first place. That's what they're trying to get to, and then when the loans all get packaged, go to the GS to the Fannie Mae's and the Freddie Macs of the world. Then now you've got a connected score that speaks to the quality of the securitized product that's moving through, and so now SEC is involved. So it's potentially a real game changer if it has wide adoption, if it is standardized. And so, that's our job, that's our challenge. But that's certainly the thought. You mentioned the FICO score. We would hope that the Brit score becomes the FICO score for real estate, and we would hope that the property record becomes the due diligence system for real estate.
Distinguish the difference between the impact of understanding the value that comes along with the score and what a broker would call a BOV. Distinguish how this replaces a BOV, like automatically.
Thank you. BOV, broker opinion of value, is based on comparable sales, period. And they're not adjusted. So as an appraiser, I spent as much time adjusting sales to equate them to the subject property, or to equalize them against the subject property, as just finding them. And you rarely find a perfect set of sales, right? So the adjustment process is critical, and to look at raw sales information that is not adjusted is, I won't say it's meaningless. It provides some value, but it's only until they're adjusted that they matter, and a BOV does not do that. Then the BOV stands alone in that it's not the value indication by the sales comparison approach, if you will, in the appraisal speak, is not reconciled against an income analysis. Many commercial agents know how to run an Argus lease analysis, but some do, some don't. Not every property calls for an Argus run. And then totality is a great source for replacement cost. So now you've got all three appraisal methodologies that are reconciled into a final valuation. That's the strength of the appraisal process compared to the BOV process. And that's all captured in this program as well.
Anything to add before I kind of open up some questions, since I know, we have like Scott Cook, asset management, property management, Mercedes, and James Davis, developers on different projects. So any final word adding before I open it up?
No, go ahead. Good questions. Yeah, that'd be great.
So anyone in the audience, maybe Scott, property asset management, have you ever used this on Mercedes, James Davis, on the development projects? Have you guys used ESG or been curious about it? But Scott, maybe, as you manage portfolios and everything else, have you worked with it or understand it, or any of your clients reached out to you about ESG and sustainability?
I'm pretty familiar with USGBC. And it was a bigger push, I'll say, probably maybe 10 years ago or so. A lot of the brokers, including myself, were getting, what was that certification? I can't remember. Lead certification. So, and that was going to be a big thing, right? So we were all getting it because we were going to, be able to work with our clients and kind of specialize as people do. I haven't seen that pick up, at least out in the marketplace, but here in California, for instance, we have annual requirements on reporting certain building sizes, and so, and I don't even know if a lot do that. So when we're representing clients, whether it be asset management or brokerage, like I do in San Diego as well, understanding, like you say, the scores and where improvements can be made. Investing myself, I know firsthand, people are looking for the improvements that they know of and are comfortable with, and that's the properties they look at. They go, I know I can make these improvements and raise the rent, right, and the value. This subject is complicated, and I know it's rocket scientists will say it's easy. Well, that's great if you're a rocket scientist. So I think the challenge has always been, and I've been aware of this and been in it and a proponent of it for a long time. But it is confusing, and attention spans these days are limited, even for the best of people. So I think as you can take a building and really turn it over to you or a program, and it really just kind of lays it all out. I mean, I don't mean to sound lazy about it, but there's just so much going on and so many opportunities. So as easy as you can make it, and it sounds like you have, but when you look at even at your slides, that's a lot of text. I mean, and it's great and it's all valuable, but it's just a lot of data, right? So I think that's always the challenge with this subject. I'll say I'm a longtime vegan, so I'm a big fan of it from a lot of different angles, and sustainability and people doing the right thing. I mean, and so walking the talk kind of the thing, right? So, but it does come down to ROI. I mean, ultimately, on properties that I own, I've got to see that. And again, I know the easy stuff. I know replacing windows, for office buildings, improving better energy management systems, and some of those kind of things. I can even tell you on a personal level, I was bidding out solar, and I was told that now I can't get the rebate. It has to go to the company, and then I've got to lease it back is the only way they can get the rebate. So some of that kind of stuff is just educational and good. So, I think it does for me anyway, as a property manager, broker, and all of that. It just comes down to making it as simple as possible. And even though there's savings, if it gets overwhelming, you just back out, right? Like once something gets too much. So I love it, and as much as this can be, I mean, look, as simplified as you can get it, right? And here's the building address, here's some utility bills, whatever you need. And then, here's the cost of that report. Then you get the ROI, and it's pretty easy from there. And then you get into financing or not, et cetera. So those are my thoughts on it. I'm a huge fan of it, obviously, in every angle. In California, we're forced into some reporting and things, which is good.
Like New York, but
Huh?
Scott, thank you on that. So kind of simplicity of what kind of Scott said, as he is in this business, knowing it, liking it. watching the changes. So what are you doing to simplify and demystify the confusion I think that's going around?
Wow. Well, so let me speak about, trying to maximize the amount of money that you have in implementing any type of design or technology implementation into a particular asset. This was, so there's an accounting principle called triple bottom line cost benefit analysis that I have been hot on with my clients for the last 10 years. The USGBC lead rating system had 2 pilot credits that I would be called on to implement for sustainability professionals, whether I was doing the sustainability consulting or not. And what you said exactly, there's a lot of moving pieces. So I purposely sat down and created an application, a website, and I put it in the chat. It's our P3I platform, Planet People Profit Impact platform, that allows you to go in. We've built these static models. This information is just an example of what we do within ESG impacts. But we built these marketplace representative code compliant, minimally code compliant, right, to represent that lowest first cost minimum code office building or whatever, with all of the demographic and geospecific information on utility usage, greenhouse gases, particular salaries, the real estate around it, to be able to allow you to go in and play with the amount of money that you have and pick the best practices that you want to implement and see what your environmental, social, and financial dollar value impact is, net present value over the life cycle that's in there. Now we have 50 years in there for that, but this is just an example of the information that we do, the level of granularity that we get down to be able to address, Scott, exactly what you said. So many clients have said to me, I got all these moving pieces. I said, okay, well, let's sit down and let's look at your building. Let's build a baseline model of where your building's at, and let's figure out what you want to do. What do you want to do with respect to impact? And let's figure out either how much money will get you there, or you start with the money and we'll figure out how, do you want to make financial impacts, human impacts, or environmental impacts, or a combination of all of that. And then we break it out, and it shows within that platform actually who gets that benefit. Is it the asset owner, is the asset inhabitant, or is the community in which that is? So I'll be glad to sit down, offline or in another thing like this and walk through the program and how it's used. But we have onboarding videos and quick start stuff that you go take a look at it. But that's just we call this it's an opportunity awareness portal, and it's part of what we're going to be rolling out through USGBC and obviously with Renaissance as an educational tool around getting people to understand the order of magnitude that comes from deploying different generationally best practices and who benefits from it, right? So this is just another tool that we help to simplify the understanding, to help people internalize it. And, the tool's also there to connect pathways to actions with people that know how to do this.
So let me ask this other question, since I see Eddie on this, and we're talking about now from the old buildings that need to be rehabbed and adjusted, right? They're built way a long time ago. They need some changes, and like you said, Dave, it's just terrible. But Eddie is doing modular. So what about modular 3D, these new constructions that are now probably more in a controlled environment? But Eddie, if you can, do you want to say a couple about modular and then see where the ESG, the green, the LEED, all that sustainability is on modular? Eddie, do you want to share a little?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Hey guys, so we have worked with several developers now that have shifted their focus in going from stick build to construct to modular. This initiative was accelerated due to the fires in Palisades in Altadena, but also applies to some of the larger construction projects that we have that are mainly hospitality and multifamily driven. We do want to, the whole purpose is to build a better product at the end of the day. All of our construction utilizes type 2 steel and MGO fiber cement boards, which in essence are non-combustible fire rated products. But I'm curious how this would all inlay into the grand scheme of things, whether it be in those larger commercial projects or even in residential.
Great question. So a couple things. During the asset management piece of the Brits model, the P3I platform generates best management practices, which would include the materials and methods and means that you're describing in the construction process. And so it's not just, is there a solar installation? Is there, well, do we need to do something about the tinted glass? Do we need to do something about concrete? Do we need steel? Pick a product. And so if there is an opportunity to rehab some of these buildings using and so they'll be phased. You're not going to try to do it presumably all in one, but the idea would be that the program would say, here are the materials and again, the methods, construction methods that represent best management practices. They can be employed. We have that, and we get a quote on them. So now we're getting real time, real cost. And then if you do those things, then what is the change in the valuation of the property? And then it's iterative, so that if the delta between before value and after value doesn't cover the cost of the improvement, then the program iterates back again until you're biting it off in phases. We can afford to spend this much because it's going to generate a value increase of X. So there's that, and that's how P3I and the Brits connection is made. That P3I contributes directly to the best management practices that govern the asset management strategies.
So, David, did you want to add something to that?
I was just going to say that, from a super granular perspective, and what we do is we model what the lowest first cost minimum code marketplace is doing. So, in this example, we've done a number of analysis around, SIPA solutions, structurally insulated panel solutions for different applications. And, the challenge always with any of these better practices is being able to speak to the benefits that come from what the marketplace is doing. So, what we would do is sit down, Eddie, with your solutions. We build that's what we already have built, a typical stick built product, what you would find, what you have to compete against. That's what you have to compete against every day. So the marketplace always wins. You got to be able to show how you benefit by what you do. But, the things, these are not difficult tasks once you realize what the opportunity is. And, we have so much granular data. We have, for every piece of lumber that's come to your site that you have to compete against, or you're using, a fireproof deal, we know within a reasonable expectation amount of greenhouse warming potential that's come from the extraction of that material, the delivery to the factory, manufacturing the factory, delivery to the job site, the recycling, the life cycle, maintenance, all that stuff. We have that super granular data, which is important, but nobody's comparing it effectively to what's actually happening in the marketplace. They always start with their stuff and say how much better it is, and they don't tie that back to what is being delivered 90% of the time in the marketplace. That's the level of granularity that we get to from a due diligence perspective. That's type of analysis may or may not be necessary in what we're delivering up front to the real estate broker or to that team, but it definitely is what is needed when we start moving manufacturers forward in the marketplace.
We may have to do a continuation too, because I know a lot of the developers and people of different service classes here. But I just want Nelson, thank you, David, thank you, Bob, thank you for sharing this. And definitely, if you are listening, to reach out to learn more. We'll probably do another follow-up to go more in depth with case studies for everyone there. But just want to thank our guests here to speak and share. Please reach out and connect. And also looking for everyone joining us every Wednesday on Top Agent Nation Commercial Wednesdays, so we can share such great speakers' knowledge and making connections. And definitely for all of us here, I know we want to make the world a better place. let's make it sustainable and renewable. But again, thank you all for being our guests and also being present, but reach out and connect with everyone and join us every Wednesday. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.